we move to the next speaker. Most of us, I like this group because not everybody is a water expert, very diverse. And for the first time, we are going to get somebody from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because they're the ones who actually negotiate. We talk and bring all sides, but when they go there, they decide otherwise. They are the diplomats. I remember when we were doing a pre-negotiation, we the scientists, we all agreed on water security. The diplomats came and said, you don't talk about water security. What is that? Water security? No, we are diplomats, we are not going to talk about that. So they came with their own words. Now, I would like to introduce Mr. Ahmed Sharif, who is the Deputy Director, Cabinet of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the one in charge of COP27. He want to tell us their perspective, of water cooperation to be in the heart of all climate, and from the diplomat perspective and the perspective. Dr. Sharif, I invite you to say a few words that will be followed by Dr. Ala Al-Sawahri, who is the professor of hydrology. So Egypt has given us a scientist and a diplomat. So that will close our thing with that unification. I give you the floor now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balmastal. I can see we're sort of running out of time, so I will see to it that I deliver my message in as concise a manner as possible in the interest of time and in order to be of assistance to our dear moderator. So the title of what myself and my colleague Dr. Ala Al-Zawahri are going to present is about the negotiations on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam as a case in point on challenges facing cooperation. But let me first tie this topic to the bigger topic of our discussion today, which is about water cooperation and climate change. And let me say in the beginning that Egypt is a country that cannot afford, does not have the luxury not to have conducive and effective transboundary water cooperation. Okay. So I'm saying that Egypt is a country that does not have the luxury not to have effective transboundary water cooperation, even in the absence of climate change. And the reason is simple. We all know the unique status of water scarcity that Egypt is suffering. Egypt is not only uniquely dependent on the Nile for its renewable water resources, about 98% of Egypt's renewable water resources come from the Nile, but Egypt is also the most arid country on earth, and I'm using the superlative intentionally. And I invite every one of you to go and check the statistics of Aquastat, of FAO, and you'll find that the rainfall of Egypt annually per square kilometer is around 18 millimeter, which is the lowest on earth. 85% or 80% of Egypt's renewable water goes to agriculture, which sustains the livelihood of around 50% of the population. We are already reusing our irrigation water for the purposes of agriculture 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, sometimes up to 4 times, to the extent that the water that reaches the Mediterranean is no longer good for anything. It's just drainage water. And then climate change, after all of this, adds another dimension. There is this dimension of uncertainty. We are not sure how much water we are going to get in the future. And add to that the challenges that we're having already, even without knowing what will happen in the future when it comes to the erosion of the delta and saltwater intrusion, which is already a huge challenge, and that is why we have to plant quite a lot of rice in the delta region, which consumes water, of course. Now, my first point, I guess, is what are the challenges, in our opinion, to effective transboundary cooperation, which Egypt cannot afford to live without? There are 2 things that I could think of. One of them is when there is selective application of international law. When some party says that We are abiding by international law, but when you probe into the matter closer, you realize that they're being selective in doing that. They're not doing that in a comprehensive way. I can think of two examples of this. One of them is the CFA. The CFA is an agreement that only some of the Nile Basin countries signed, and it has been open for signature about 10 years ago. Until now, it has not, its ratification has not, I mean, it has not come into force because several countries have not yet signed or ratified it. And the issue with this CFA, it's an abbreviation for maybe comprehensive framework agreement or cooperative framework agreement. It is neither comprehensive nor cooperative. That's a misnomer, if anything. And the reason is that it does not cater for the interests of all the basin. And it includes all guarantees possible for upstream countries with nothing remaining for downstream countries. An example of this, or to clarify what I mean, for example, everything is mentioned about equitable and reasonable utilization, and also the obligation not to cause significant harm, of course, but there is nothing on the obligation to consult in advance, to cooperate. The 1997 agreement, UN Water Agreement, includes a detailed section on the due diligence that has to be practiced in order to make sure that there is proper consultation and proper socioeconomic and environmental impact studies undergone in advance. Nothing on that in the CFA. Add to this that there is nothing on existing agreements as we have in the 1997 agreement. Another example of selective application of international law is Ethiopia's policies in general when it comes to transboundary water resources, which I'm afraid to say is sort of cherry picking. Once again, Ethiopia says that it is bound by, of course, that it entertains its right to equitable and reasonable utilization, and no one could disagree with this, and that it is bound by the obligation not to cause significant harm. But then it does not talk about the obligation to consult, the obligation to conduct socioeconomic and environmental impact studies. And I'll talk more about that later. So I'm talking about challenges to effective cooperation, one of them selective application of international law, but the other is the absence of political will. The absence of political will. When you have a partner who is not willing to cooperate, we could trace several, maybe 3 manifestations of this. One of that is when, and first and foremost I would say, when this party rejects solutions that cater for its economic interests ideally, if not in full. That is one manifestation of lack of political will. And then make ill-founded claims on international law. And then, moreover, refuse to be bound by a legally binding dispute resolution mechanism under international law. One of these is enough to demonstrate lack of political will. But as I will explain later, we are facing the 3 in the case of the GERD negotiations. I will not linger much on the history of the GERD negotiations. I would like to invite you. It's more than 1 decade long, and it's a sad story, I have to say. But then, please, I would invite you to refer to presentations previously made in the Cairo Water Week, and you can find it online, including the detailed briefing on this history. But I would just like to point out a couple of points. One of them is that this huge dam on one of the most important tributaries of the Nile is being actually constructed without adequate socioeconomic and environmental impact studies, which is incumbent upon Ethiopia in accordance with international law. This is a source of worry to us, I have to say. And most recently, satellite imagery could show that there are cracks extended in the facade, concrete facade of the dam, of the Saddle Dam, which is a part of the GERD. This is alarming. I mean, we do not know exactly what does this mean. Is it catered for or not? But then we do not get an fulfilling answer from our brothers in Ethiopia. Back in 2015, we have agreed that the filling and operation of the dam is going to be in accordance with an agreement on filling and operation. This agreement has not been implemented, and we are experiencing we are seeing repeated violations of this agreement. The dam is being unilaterally filled and operated in the absence of an agreement. The conclusion that we have over a long process of negotiations is that there is no political will on the side of Ethiopia, and the three manifestations that I mentioned a while ago are there. So, number one, we could establish over the last years that our interests are not mutually exclusive, and that Ethiopia could find easily solutions that cater for its economic interests, if not in full, then at least ideally. And when I say this, I mean two things. One of them is that power generation from the dam could take place at optimum levels, I would say maximum levels during drought, even during prolonged drought. And the other one is that the agreement caters for Ethiopia's future projects. The rights, as Ethiopia always says, the rights of the future generations, both in terms of legal terms and also technically. And that means that what is on the table says that nothing prejudices Ethiopia's right to conduct future projects in accordance with international law. The issue appears to be international law. Generally, as I will explain, our Ethiopian brothers do not like the term international law to be associated with their future projects. But also technically, and when I say this, I mean that the figures mentioned in what is proposed on the table are not prohibitive of constructing future projects feasibly. The second thing is that Ethiopia continues to reject to be bound by any dispute resolution mechanism, a binding dispute resolution mechanism in accordance with international law. One more thing that I forgot. At one point, in order to assure our Ethiopian brothers, we said that even though what is on the table already caters for future projects, we are proposing that we go together and seek financing for your future projects and mobilize funding for that purpose. And let us have the World Bank, which has a very successful experience before in conducting and guaranteeing the Indus River Treaty. Let us have the World Bank propose to us drought mitigation measures that we should take care of when it comes to the future projects, and let us be bound by it in accordance with international law. And that again was refused. And let me here commend that some upstream countries, the representatives of which are with us here in the room and in this panel, have they themselves sought the assistance of the World Bank in order to see to it, to make sure that there is going to be conducive cooperation. So it's not a question of upstream and downstream, it's a question of partners willing to cooperate in accordance with international law or not, and have no issue with that.
Mr. Ahmad, please, the other session they are standing at the gate. You might not allow the professor to take the floor. Could you just conclude?
I will conclude.
And the professor a few minutes to fill in the gaps.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will conclude in a couple of minutes. And then the third thing is that there are claims referring to international law that, for instance, there has to be, as a prerequisite, a water allocation agreement in order to identify the threshold of significant harm and be able to have an agreement that Ethiopia would not amend unilaterally or withdraw from it altogether, as Ethiopia is requesting. And of course, this is when we look at best practices, we realize that we have in our basin the Senegal River Commission, which has been there for 50 years with a lot of shared water resources agreements, and none of them is a water allocation agreement, so this is not a prerequisite. I'm just trying here to emphasize that the threat could be imminent when it comes to Egypt, even though it is usually said that hydropower projects, by definition, have to let water pass in order to generate power, and that over the last few years we have been lucky to have a high yield of the river. The Aswan High Dam is full right now, but then I can say that after the filling of the dam is completed in a couple of years, and provided that we are going to have average yield of the river, the Aswan High Dam will only be able to cater for, to protect us from drought, a prolonged drought like the ones that we faced in the 80s, a decade-long drought, only for half of the time, and then it is going to be totally depleted. So my last point is, what do we do? What do we do in order to overcome these challenges of cooperation? One of them is to encourage comprehensive and non-selective application of international law. And the other is to challenge any party that we sense has no political will by citing, by verifying whether their economic interests are fulfilled or not. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you very much. That's from the diplomatic side. We have seen talk about agreements, and one thing he said, Egypt cannot afford not to have cooperation, and that is very important. And one thing I will emphasize, we used to talk many, many years ago that shared water base is a source of conflict. It was here in Egypt about 5 years ago. Then the then water minister said, shared water basin is a source of cooperation. So Egypt, we wish that that cooperation will continue. Now I call upon Professor Alain, who will continue the same from the scientific perspective. He will give a PowerPoint presentation. You are welcome, Prof. You are between us and coffee.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to thank you all for waiting after 11 to listen to me, because I hate to give a lecture and the audience are not satisfied with me. I was planning to give the lecture sitting, but despite my knee injury, my long-lasting habit of giving lectures standing superseded. So I will try to be standing on one leg for 15 minutes, which is good. I have to finish very quickly. Okay, I'll be talking about the negotiation of GERD, which I think everyone heard about this, and maybe most of you have good information about it. This presentation is just a drop of an effort for 10 years carried out by the technical team of negotiation, as I mentioned here. Of course, I would love to give all the names of the technical teams, but I will give some names. Dr. Ahmed Baz, ex-head of Nile water sector, Dr. Mansour Hunter, the head, Dr. Arif, the pillar, the two technical dynamic, Engineer Luai, Engineer Mustafa. Dr. Hani Swela was part of the negotiation team for one period. He was, I think you know Dr. Hani Swela. Dr. Muhammad Abdul Ati, the minister from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Sameh Shukri, and I think I don't like to add anything to Sameh Shukri. He is very well known, and Ahmed Sharif, and so many people working for 10 years in the negotiation, hundreds of, no, not hundreds, thousands of miles traveling, hundreds of meetings, meeting everyone, all concerned people on political and technical levels all over the world, reviewing all the publications. So we have spent a lot of effort here in Egypt for one main objective, is to reach an agreement based in cooperation, mainly. If we move, the presentation will cover what is the problem. I will try to go very quickly over it, and then what the proposal of Egypt for win-win situation. This slide is really very important. Why? The declaration of principle, which everyone is referring to from time to time, says reaching an agreement. Agreement for what? For filling an operation of GERD. And it is for single dam with the GERD. This is the agreement. This is written in the agreement. So we are addressing single dam to reach an agreement about filling an operation. Nothing else. We are not addressing the entire Blue Nile. We are not addressing the entire Eastern Nile. We are not addressing anything except what is written here. And this is the terms of references, and this is the basics of initiating and working on the agreement. If we continue, what is GERD? It is written very clearly, and everyone agreed that GERD is a power generation dam. Nothing mentioned that using the water for agriculture, nothing for drinking, nothing for industrial, nothing at all. GERD for power generation. Egypt felt, yes, it is our duty as a partner in Africa to cooperate and work with Ethiopia in order to generate power and everyone be happy. But from the perspective point of view of the hydrology and hydraulics, the power generation dam is a non-consumptive utilization. So the two pillars of the meetings were based on not to cause significant harm and to observe equitable water utilization. Egypt is committed to do this. No significant harm. We define significant harm as we will see how we were able to reach this. And equitable water utilization in the light of non-consumptive dam for power generation, which is GERD, and not the entire Blue Nile. So the equitable utilization from the perspective of Egypt is observed and is agreed upon. Yes, generate the maximum power, the optimum power. We will give you the chance to do this. We will never object generating the maximum power. Do whatever you like to get the power. This is your right of equitable water utilization for non-consumptive dam, but not to cause significant harm. So we are rotating around this point all the time. This is the definition. First of all, GERD, of course, I will not talk about the information about GERD. It is 74, the high Aswan dam 162 BCM. Those two dams are storing 280% of the flow or annual flow, which is two dams are struggling to store water because it's almost 3 times the annual average flow. So this creates a problem. In this point, I am addressing the expert of hydrology and hydraulics, anyone, even our students in the university. The first lesson we teach them that when you have a river and you have 2 large dams, the only solution is to work as multi-reservoir operation. Everyone agreed about this. All the publications, MIT, Deltares, UCLA, all of them are saying the solution is a multi-reservoir operation, which Egypt is asking all the time to work as multi-reservoir operation. How the 2 dams can operate together for the benefit of reducing the impact and at the same time increasing the power generation. This is very quickly, this is Aswan Dam. Aswan Dam is, has 3 zones, 30 TPCM, which is dead storage for kept for sedimentation. We have 90 PCM is the live storage used, and we have 40 PCM for emergency and flood protection in case of we have severe floods. GERD has 14 PCM as dead storage and 60 PM left for live storage and flood protection. It is 74. This is the comparison between the 2 dams. So, secure water resources and generate hydropower. This is the main issue for the dams, as I mentioned earlier. Here we can say, I'm addressing that Egypt, as my colleague Ahmed Sharif said, scarcity in Egypt and the water resource in Egypt. I will not go to this kind of detail. Ethiopia needs electricity. We believe that the reservoir is oversized, and we have evidence of this. It controls 150 of the Nile flow. It is sole purpose of power generation. So I'm just repeating the same I mentioned earlier. So the balance is secure water and generate hydropower. We not to cause significant harm, equitable water utilization, need for a balanced solution. Here I'm giving again GERD with the levels for anyone interested to know. I said earlier, but this is a detailed description of GERD, what are the different levels and so on. At 542, we have low-level power generation turbines and 2 outlets, and 578, we have the additional 11 turbines on 2 sides. And this is the maximum and minimum. I will not go to this detail because I think most of you are aware of this. And this is High Aswan Dam again, as I mentioned to you. When we talk about High Aswan Dam, it is very important to observe one point. It is very important to know that High Aswan Dam is operating as per the design developed and based on the reliability of the dam and the risk and the flood protection to operate up to 174 level, keeping the 40 PCM on the top for the storage, and then to start going down and up. Due to the presence of GERD and due to the unilateral actions practiced over the last 10 or 15 years, we don't know what Ethiopia is going to do, and we don't know what Ethiopia is planning to store at any time. They keep giving false informations. Maybe they are sending messages to the local of Ethiopia that this year we will store 10 BCM, and this year we will do this. But they know very well that they will not be able to store this amount. When we hear the news and we know that they are doing this, we start working as if any flow coming will be short of 10 PCM or whatever. So we start storing more water in our system, trying to be safe in case of they store what they have in order to mitigate the drought and so on. They failed 3 times by giving good information and unilateral actions. And based on this, Egypt started to change the policy of running the dam. And instead of going to 174, they start to going higher and storing higher, bearing the risk that if the flood comes and the 40 PCM is not there, we will open some additional spillways in order to release the water to the desert. And this happened. We stored and the flood came high. So we start to go up to the maximum and release some water to Toshka and the desert, and they start claiming, oh, you have enough water. Yes, it is not enough water. We changed our management system in order to absorb the shock, in order to be safe in the future, because the unilateral actions of Ethiopia, which we kept repeating and communicating with them for this reason. I'm here just answering the question which might come to your mind or anyone, and it has been raised, oh, you have plenty of water. Yes, we were lucky that the last few years the flood was above average, but we don't know what they are going to store and so on. This is one of the issues which has been raised several times, so I want to clarify this. This is very schematic. The flow was coming. This is GERD now. GERD will fill, had water level will go. If you look at the upper right corner, you will see that there is a drought period for 10 years, 1979 up to 89. In this period, I would like also to show you very clearly that in this period, the average flow is 49. While the moving average over the last 10 years was 40, which means that 90 PCM shortage in the flow of the Blue Nile. If you multiply by 10 years, it is 90. Then, because the other streams coming from Ethiopia are generated from the same mountain, so they experienced additional losses about 45 PCM. So the total losses for the water coming from Ethiopia is reduced 135 PCM. Do you recognize this shortage in volume? So some people are saying now, it is filled now, maybe they have 22 PCM filled now in GERD. And High Aswan Dam is on a high level, and we diverted some water to Toshka. What is the problem? The problem of filling is, from our point of view, it is only 15% of the problem. The problem is, during the operation, what will happen? It is stochastic, the flow is going up and down. And the problem is the refilling. Imagine that after the filling, High Aswan Dam will not be 174, definitely, because some water will be taken. It will be even if it is 174 level, and the drought strike again after 10 years, 20 years, whatever the number of years, there will be a shortage more than 175. It means that the two reservoirs, Had and GERD, will be dropped and maybe reach the dead storage, depending on the severity of the flood. In such case, yes, we are ready to cooperate. We are ready to bear the drought, because the drought is the act of God, and we accept everything. But what comes after the drought? Ethiopia is insisting to fill in the same pattern, to start taking water, filling 10, and so on till they finish the fill, and High Aswan Dam is down, shortage, no electricity, and so on. So this issue is one of the major issues, how to operate the dam in a multi-reservoir operation between Egypt and Ethiopia. Why Ethiopia is rejecting this? Let me tell you something. When you deal with someone and you get the optimum solution for his benefit and your benefit, and he doesn't like to have an agreement. Why? Political will, or whatever they have in mind. I don't like to interfere to their brains. How he can go around this issue? By abstracting some controversial issues. No, your approach may be everyone in the world is talking about multi-reservoir operation, but I'm a sovereign country. Yes, you are a sovereign country, we are co-sovereign country also. We are a sovereign country, so why you are controlling me by giving you a check to do something in the future? I'm not talking about the future, I'm talking about agreement, about two dams. The two dams, how, if we face drought, how we can deal with each other, how can we cooperate? And then, no, multi-reservoir operation is not accepted. Give me another approach. Yes, I will give you another approach. How about working on something called circuit breaker? What is circuit breaker? Let us cooperate. If the flow is such, release such. If the flow is such, release such, and so on. And we prepared a matrix. This was in Washington, very long matrix, and agreed about how much flow he will release, how much he store in order to reduce the electricity. Let me tell you something. In the most severest case of the drought, Ethiopia will be able to generate 85% of the electricity they want. In the most severe case, while Egypt will produce zero from High Aswan Dam. And we accepted this. We told them, yes, 85% okay, in High Aswan Dam, we have some other sources, we can cooperate in this. Then they said, no multi-reservoir. He said, okay, fine. Let us cooperate about to release. We made matrix. The matrix was agreed in Washington. And the circuit breaker means very simple. We work on this matrix. You count the shortage in GERD, not in High Aswan Dam. When the shortage reaches 50 PCM or 60 PCM in the system, there is some water. We will agree about some water because High Aswan Dam at that time will be lost almost his resilience. The resilience of the dam will be almost lost. So let us go for the circuit breaker. Agreed, and then no, it's not proper, we are a sovereign country. Yes, we have another approach. Let us have 3 layers of drought. If severe drought for 1 year, if severe drought for 4 years, if below the average for many years, let us cooperate and get some, well, we made 3 layers, agreed, we put the numbers, we went back to our countries in order to come after 2 weeks to sign the agreement. We are a sovereign country. Okay? So, maybe I'll try to end I will show you here some of this is when we agreed about the drought management, this is the international figure of the level of drought. You have mild drought, moderate, you have severe, you have extreme, you have exceptional. We were able to go even during drought, we will take the extreme drought, we will agree that we will accept this, where 90% of the time, Ethiopia can do whatever they like during the filling. But in the coming 7%, let no stop and release some water because we accepted to have extreme drought. So this also was rejected by Ethiopia. Here I explained the 3 approaches I mentioned, multi-reservoir and circuit breaker and multi-layer. This shows the impact of what to do in this case. The coordination of 2 large dams, this is what we have been mentioned. I'm giving some numbers of the filling and the impact of this. This graph was discussed in the very beginning. High Aswan Dam at 174. This is during the stages, and this will be repeated with severe case in the future if the drought comes and after the drought. You can see that the red line indicates the filling. You can see the water is rising in GERD, and you can see the water is dropping in High Aswan Dam. This was the proposal. If we reach 147, there will be no flow from the dam. We cannot use it. We are in deep storage. Power generation is fully at level 159. There will be no power generation from Egypt. And this, the proposal of Ethiopia to have upper hand to do anything. Of course, we put some mitigation measures and so on, but anyway, we cannot reach a conclusion. What we need, win-win, comprehensive agreement, equitable, reasonable burden sharing. They have to bear something of the burden, adaptive and cooperative. I will end with just one statement. Is there any impact on GERD on Egypt? Because some people might see that we have a lot of water now, so don't worry about just no. We are talking about the future. We are talking about agreement to last 100 years. We have records for 120 years. We simulated 120 years stochastically. We generated thousands of scenarios, and based on scenarios, we have a probability and risk map in order to avoid the risk when it comes. Is there an impact? Yes. For 1 billion loss, if we reach shortage, for 1 billion, we have 130 hectares of water maybe will not be able to irrigate. We have $150 million additional food gap for 1 billion. We have 290,000 loss of jobs. We had 460 million in order to recover again the agriculture and this. It will be severe. We are trying to avoid this, and Ethiopia knows everything about this. Now, what is the situation now? The situation is very clear. We are for negotiation. Nothing has stopped. Maybe we don't announce that there is something and so on. Nothing has stopped. Let me tell you that on all the levels of Egypt, presidency, minister, prime ministers, ministers of water resources, minister of everyone, technical people, we are in communication with all concerned parties on all different levels, and they are communicating with us in order to reach somehow a conclusion. We are working on that. It is the morning exercise we are doing, everyone is doing. We hope that the entire community, the world community, start working with us in this in order to press somehow in Ethiopia to realize what we are saying and to have the political will. We are not enemy. We are brother and sister in Africa. This is the message I would like to give to everyone. Well, I thank God that my left hand was good, that I was able to stand on it. And I need you, all of you, to wish me a fast recovery. And thanks a lot for you, and any questions, I'm ready. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think that you've given us a lot to chew. And I'd like to say that 95 to the win-win situation that everyone is looking about. Cooperation, equitable, reasonable and adaptive and cooperation. All is about cooperation. And I think that I have really put it that way. And I'll apologize that we were able to open it to the floor. We have given it enough. You've been wonderful standing here saying that no one is sleeping. No one is looking at Facebook. Everybody has been attentive. We have learned a lot. Thank you very much, and see you next year, inshallah, for the same. Can we have a family photographer give us a family